Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to a new episode of A Canadian Investing in the USA with Glenn Sutherland. This week, my guest is Danielle Chaisson. Danielle, you want to start off by giving everybody a bit of an intro to yourself?
Yeah, Glenn. Hey, how's it going?
Good.
To you and everyone. Thanks for having me on the show. Super excited about our conversation today. But before we dive into it, for those who haven't heard me on another podcast or on stage, my name is Danielle Chaisson. I am the CEO and founder of Strategic Success Consulting. And that is our one-to-many coaching business that we have. And so that's where we do real estate and business coaching and consulting, helping people on their journeys. And essentially, I guess, a little bit about how that came to be. That's what I'm doing now. But how that came to be was naturally, just like most people on your show have been real estate investors for some time. And I started just over 2 decades ago in real estate and haven't stopped since. So the first 10 years of my investing career was as what I call as an amateur. I was a landlord. I bought properties and rented them out, thought I had it all figured out. And then in 2013, I started getting education and realized I knew nothing. And there was so much more to the space. And back then, Glenn, there really wasn't a whole lot of, we didn't have podcasts. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have all this stuff. And so ultimately, I got educated, went down to the States, spent 2 years, over 2 years actually, immersing myself with a company down there that I had aligned myself with. They were coaching me and got into flipping. And I flipped for a long time, pivoted, went into small multis, pivoting again, because throughout all of this, my career, people were wanting to learn more from me because I was hands-on. I'm still very hands-on. It's what I do. Yeah. And learning a lot of my business, learning a lot about the trades and flipping and construction and real estate and all of that, and just sharing and pouring into the community. So people started asking me if I could coach them, and I started doing that. And then during COVID, we had this pop-up of all these real estate coaches, and it was really annoying me a little bit. And I said, okay, the integrity of our business is going to kind of go downhill if we don't really have a solid company that you can rely on. So Strategic Success Consulting was my one-to-many business, and that was my vision. And I want to help people, no matter where you are on your journey, whether you're new, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, everybody gets stuck and needs help along the way. So that's what our business is all about.
Yeah. So how did that transition go into flipping? Because you said you were doing rentals off the start, and then so was it like you're doing the rentals, you went and did the education, and then something popped in your head during that?
Yeah. Well, just like a lot of people who get into real estate, ultimately they're doing something, they're doing a job, or there's at some point in their life where they're not happy. They know that there's more, and they just need to sniff around and find a way to untap that more and what that looks like. And that was me. I was in a position in my life, I was helping my ex-partner build his business, and things were going sideways there. And then I realized, you know what? If this doesn't work out with him, I got nothing. I helped him build his business. So I need to figure out what I want to do, and I need to do something for myself. And so I started looking at what it is I wanted to do. So I was really interested in flipping, and it's just by a chance. I was driving down the highway. I had on 680 News, and there was an ad for this company to do this free 2-hour workshop or preview. They call it a preview. I didn't know it at the time, but they're called previews in the industry. Went to this thing, and then they sold me to a 3-day event, and then I bought into the whole program. And then that was really the launch of me going into this as a career. And instead of just having a few properties, as a side hustle, right? And there's nothing wrong with doing that and building some real estate. And I encourage anybody to build real estate. You don't have to build a business around real estate, but definitely having some real estate in your portfolio will help you with your retirement 100%, because it hedges inflation. And that's the one thing that I love about real estate, beyond just the fact that, well, who doesn't love real estate? let's
I
be
think
honest
everybody
here.
listening does, or at least
right?
an idea of it if they haven't started yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, continue.
So that's kind of how I got into it. Yeah. And I mean, I wanted disposable income. I wanted to learn to flip. My ex partner was a contractor. I was very, very familiar and comfortable in that space. So I got into flipping, and just like anybody's real estate journey, it's just a continual progression into the next stage until you find your thing that you just want to sit in for a while. So I started with, as a landlord buying properties. I went into the construction part with flipping, did some conversions, small multis, and I'm just continuing. The next thing for us is to build an MFT and actually build purpose-built apartment buildings, which I'm very excited about.
Awesome. So I wanted to talk more about the flipping, right? So you started doing interested in flipping. Did you start by doing flipping near where you live, or did you go pick a different market, or how did that sort of look?
Yeah, so I didn't listen to my coach. Sometimes, you got a hard head, you got to learn the hard way, right?
All right.
And ultimately what happened was my coach just told me, listen, when you get into flipping, you want to market, find a market, you want to vet the market, you want to flip in and do your due diligence and analyze the markets. I did all of that. But I was more, and just like we all do in the beginning, I was more interested in the numbers and what made sense with the numbers. And so I was chasing the money, I guess you could say. Yeah. And so I was looking for deals that made sense, that had big margins, and didn't listen to my coaches. And my first flip was, I live in Milton. My first flip was in Port Hope, which is 2 hours on the other side of the city of Toronto. So if you can imagine like crossing New York or LA, that's like crossing Toronto. And so like just getting on the other side of the city is a challenge in itself. But 2 hours to the east of me. And then I bought that in the month of September, and my second flip was in October. So I closed on them less than a month apart, and it was literally 2.5 hours west of me. So I was almost 5 hours apart with the two projects. It really wasn't smart. Did not listen to my coach. And I also learned in doing that, the thing is that when you're flipping, you got to build a team. You need your contractors, you need your designers, you need all these people, and you have to go into the city to learn the city and, submit your permits and talk to the city, what's allowed, what's not allowed, like all these other things that you need to do. So driving from one of the cities to the other, like it was a nightmare. And because it was so far and I'd spent so much time building the team and I knew I wouldn't go back to that market, all of that time invested was now lost. Now, this is the thing. Time is an investment. Where you spend your time, you're investing into something. And so you want to make sure that we're investing your time in something that's going to be productive in the future that you can use in the future. So then all of a sudden it made sense. The light bulb went on in my head. Listen to your coaches. This is why they told you this. And then being in Milton, I have seven markets within 30 to 45 minutes of my home base. And so I started listening to my coaches, vetted the 7 markets, decided Hamilton made the most sense for me. And then I started building my teams in Hamilton. And the beautiful thing is that not only did I get to know that market and the prices and the neighborhoods, where to go, where not to go, what to look out for, but as I built my team, doing more flips in that same market became easier because I already had my contractors vetted and I knew exactly what pricing that they would give me. I had less surprises. So the flipping did become easier being in that same market because I didn't have to spend so much time finding the trades. I could just spend all that time now vetting for deals. So I didn't have to look for a new realtor. I didn't have to look for a new plumber. I didn't have to look. And every now and then you do have to look for a new trade, but at least it's one. You're not trying to build the entire team. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot on those two, but that's where it started. Yeah.
I think you kind of answered this question, but you said that you didn't listen to your coach. And was the coach's advice to invest in the same market? Was that what they were telling you?
No, they said to invest in a market within 30-minute radius. Now, If it makes sense, and they always said too, set yourself up in a market and get yourself solid in that market before you go to a different market. So, and even if you wanted to, if it's a new market for you, figure out what neighborhood within that market makes sense. And then you can have your trades and everybody working within that one neighborhood. And then that way, okay, this is a gentrifying neighborhood. This is where I'm going to get the highest ROI, but there isn't so much riffraff in that neighborhood. And then you can market, even when you're doing, if you want to do door-to-door campaign and do flyers. Then you can start farming that market and you really know what the prices are. And then when you're talking to somebody who's potentially wanting to sell, you could say, yeah, look, I'm doing this property over here. You want to come take a look at it? This is, and then they're like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And say, look, I'm just doing this for the neighborhood. I'm helping rejuvenate this area. We love this neighborhood. And so if you have neighbors even coming to you and saying, oh, I don't like what you're doing, you tell them you have to sell it to them, right? And then all of a sudden you can get that sense of community around you. But set that up, and then all your trades now are close. If you got multiple projects on the go, they're not driving 30 minutes to the other side of town from one job to the next. It's easier for them to manage as well. Or even just order supplies. They can do a run for supplies, drop off half at this project, drop off the other half there. So I did do that as well. But yeah, and then once you have your team set up and the area set up, you can go to a different market and then invest your time into building your teams in that market. But just make sure you do your due diligence on that market, that you're actually going to stay there for a while, so that the investment that you do to vet your teams is going to be not lost, the way I did in Port Hope and Sarnia.
Yeah, makes sense. And like you were saying, 30 minutes away was the sort of the guideline that they were. Is it because you go on site a lot? Like I see you have like really fancy nails. I don't picture you like lifting hammers and doing drywall, or like, do you spend a lot of time going on site, or like, is that something you do? I have more free content. So if you're interested, I created a PDF guide and a video to go along with the PDF guide to complement it. And what the guide is all about is the 5 most common mistakes that Canadians make when investing in the United States. So if you're interested in this free guide, go to CanadianInvestingInTheUSA.com/mistakes. And let's go back to the podcast. And it's free.
So in answer to your question, Glenn, clearly you haven't gone far enough back in my Facebook. Back then, it really wasn't Instagram. Back then, the socials was Facebook. And I used to do a lot of walkthroughs on my properties, and I used to do a lot of Facebook Lives. And yes, even with these nails, I will swing a hammer. I do have steel-toe boots. They're black steel-toe boots with hot pink laces. I do have some black Carhartts. Now, admittedly, I haven't put them on in a while because I actually haven't been flipping houses. But I absolutely love going on site and getting dirty and learning. So it's almost like, it's just a change of scenery. I like doing different jobs and different tasks, but I think it's really important to understand how things are done and what order they should go in and why, so that when you are managing your projects, you understand it and you can talk the same lingo and understand and communicate well with your trades. So I have been on site. I have worked on site. My first 2 projects, I was very, very hands-on. And particularly with the demo, I used to really like doing demo. But if you go back on my Facebook far enough, back to, let's see, 2016 or so.
Yeah.
There's definitely some, I was mixing cement. I remember.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
so like that is one of the advantages of being close. Like even you mentioned the social media and going there and taking videos, and it is one of the disadvantages of my business, like investing in the United States, that any pictures or videos typically are like secondhand, like that someone else is given me, because I hire project managers to manage the things, and I don't actually. I've flipped, I don't know, dozens and dozens of houses that I've never even seen. I've never put eyes on before. So I do see the advantage of it being closer, so that you could do that. Do you like just other things like for going on site? Do you find that do you think that your contractors need to have someone look over their shoulders? Is that part of it as well, or how do you make sure that they're doing what they're doing, or is that how you do is by going on site?
Yeah, 100%. Everybody needs to be held accountable. So it's no different. Listen, I'm a mom of 3. I didn't tell you anything about me personally, but I am a mom of 3. They're teenagers now. They're a little bit older. I can't leave them for too long alone if I'm traveling for work to go to a mastermind, which I have one coming up this month. and learn more without making sure somebody's checking on them. Because I want to make sure the house is maintained. I want to make sure there's no parties and that sort of thing, right? So contractors are no different. You know, if you leave them alone for too long, things are going to slip. And it's really important. And just to be clear, I don't go to my projects now. I do have a project going on right now in Sudbury. I've had a project I still haven't seen them, and I've had it for 3 years, a property in Timmins. We've done renovations, we turned over the units. I haven't seen it. Same with you. Managing remotely is very different now than managing locally. It's fun to be on site, but I was learning hands-on. I'd worked with my ex-partner in the construction before, but I hadn't managed my own project. So in the beginning, I was very hands-on, and if I can, I'll go. But now, is it the highest and best use of my time? Probably not. So I don't spend my time there, and I'd rather delegate that to somebody else. But regardless of who you delegate it to, you have to manage that person, and that person has to manage the trades. And when I say manage, it's just holding people accountable and making sure they're doing what they're doing. Now, when you're managing remotely, one of the things that you can do, and I'm sure you do this too, is to put security cameras. Yes, you're going to have to pay for internet for that property and make sure you have hydro. But when you put some cameras up and the contractors know that you can see when they're coming and going, that's something we didn't have in the beginning. So I was very much at the property 3-4 times a week because I wanted to make sure that they were there when they said they were there. One of the favorite things that I used to love doing was showing up at 4 o'clock when they're telling me, oh yeah, we worked till 5:30 last night. You know, I show up at 4 o'clock and there's nobody on site, or at 3:30, because I know contractors like to leave around 3 and 4-ish if they can. Now, if they're showing up at 7 o'clock, I don't have a problem with that. If they're showing up after, they're, because then they're putting in their full day, right? Yeah. But if they're leaving early to go get some supplies so they have it ready for tomorrow, I also don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is when they show up at 9:30, 10 o'clock because they said, oh, I had to go get some supplies and whatever, and then they leave at 3. That's a problem for me. Or, if they leave I had this one contractor, Glenn, he would show up at 8:30, 9 o'clock. By 10 o'clock, he's gone to go to Home Depot, and he wouldn't be back till after 1 o'clock. Listen, a Home Depot run for contractors in the middle of the day is a 3-hour run. They get in there, and they start looking around, and they're like, and they're thinking of other jobs. It takes them forever. And then they stop somewhere for lunch. They go for coffee. 3 hours, I'm telling you, it's brutal. So I used to always tell, that was one of the things. If you want a ninja tip, if you're managing projects, make sure you tell them, at the end of the day, take inventory of what you need for tomorrow, pick it up on your way home or pick it up on your way to work. Don't effing leave my project in the middle of the day because I will have your nuts. I swear to God. It was one of my biggest pet peeves because productivity is everything, right? And then the contractors complain when the project's taking too long. They don't like to be on the same site for very long. Nobody does. Imagine doing a task that's taking you forever and you never see the end, right? So you want to get through. Time is of the essence when it comes to real estate investing, and especially your projects. So you want to push the projects along. So there's certain little things that you want to have. So being the manager, being the boots on the ground for my early projects, I was on site a lot more to hold them accountable. And I like to show up when they were telling me they're there by 8 o'clock, I would show up and be there at 8 o'clock and wait until they show up at 8:45 and say, I thought today just because of this, because of that. But now we have cameras. So when you're managing remotely, you can have the camera say, hey man, what was the holdup this morning? What was the issue last night? You know what I mean? So you can really hold them accountable. You don't have to be cranky about it. I was probably more crankier than I needed to be, but just asking them about it and letting them know you're watching is typically enough to keep them in line.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned like Home Depot runs. Do you have them manage all the materials, or do you manage materials ever?
So again, because time is of the essence, I had a couple of reasons why I did it this way. I had an account with Home Depot, and I had a good relationship. When you're in the same market, you can build relationships, right? And so I had a good relationship with the Home Depot that I did most of my business through, because the neighborhoods that I did were all in that same area, and I used the same Home Depot. So I would have my assistant that worked in my office. I get a list from the contractor. What do you need? I'd have the assistant send in an email with all of what we needed. It would get put on my credit card with my pro contractor card with Home Depot. And then they would pick it and have it ready for pickup for the contractor. So now the contractor just shows up, loads up the order into their truck, and then they're done. So it's quick, quick, quick for them. They loved it. And if it was because it saves them a lot of time. I mean, they don't want to waste time. They want to work. They just want to work. They want to get in the job and get out, right? Good contractors. The other thing is, if it was heavy materials, a lot of materials like lumber, drywall, that sort of thing, I'd get it delivered. Yeah. And toilets and that sort of thing, because then that saves them the hassle of loading it up into the truck and unloading it out of the truck. And so again, it's just time where they can be more effective. So it was to save time, help the project along. It was also if there was any issues with material or unavailability of material, I would deal with that so they didn't have to struggle with that. And then also I get the credits on my Home Depot account, which I got to take advantage of as well.
So I know you said you work with students and other things like that. What things or what mistakes do you often see people screw up when they're doing their first flip?
Yeah, I love this. Because right now we're going into a really quiet season. It's been quiet anyway because of the market the way it's been, but traditionally November, December, January, really quiet months in the real estate market. And now is the time to be buying your next flip. And because the interest rates are coming down, I think buyers are going to start showing up. People that have been on the sidelines waiting, they're going to start buying. I think the spring market is going to be a bit of a buzz. It's not going to be what we've seen before, but I think it's going to be a healthier buzz. And flipping is back. Flipping is back, guys. You can buy properties right now with money in the buy because you can get them for less than what they're truly worth on MLS. And I think the market prices are going to start going up in the spring. So here's what I'm going to say. If you're thinking about flipping for the first time or you've only done a few flips, a couple of really common mistakes that people make. Number one is this one. And I've said it before, Glenn, but I can't stress enough. Let's say you buy a property for $500,000, okay? And you say, well, I'm going to buy this property and I'm going to put $100,000 of renovation in it. And I see the ARV, which is the after repair value, is going to be $700,000. Okay.
Yep.
Let's say 720 even. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
So you buy it for 500, you're putting in $100,000 of renovation, and your ARV is 720. Now you run your numbers, you like it, it's great. You run your numbers and you've got a net profit of $40,000. So you're like, great, I'm going to spend 4 months on this because it's a quick reno. I can renovate this in 3-4 months. So when I'm doing my underwriting, my deal analysis, I'm going to put in 4 months as my timeline and I'll get it done. And I'm going to make $40K, which is $10K a month, which is kind of healthy, right? Awesome. Well, what happens if you don't run your numbers properly? Two things that people do, common mistakes, is they underestimate the value of the construction.
Yep.
And they overestimate the value of the after repair value. Now let's run this just very simply. What if your construction costs went from 100K to 120K? So you're over budget by 20%, $20,000. By the way, it's very easy to be over by 20K.
Yep.
What if instead of $720,000, when you put it on the market, it was only $700,000 that you got for it, and you missed the mark by 20K? If those two scenarios happen, and by the way, very easy to do both. You went over by 20K, you didn't make as much as you thought by 20K. That's 40K. That was your entire profit for that project. And that's how easily you can be at a net zero, and very easily you could end up in a net negative if you're not running your numbers properly. So it's very important to be conservative on both ends to give yourself a bit of breathing room, okay? Second mistake people make is that they look at the time of the project that people do, and they think that's how long it's going to take for me to do this flip. Well, that's not true. Because let's say the renovation takes you the 3-4 months that you were anticipating. Well, The project itself is going to be from close to close. So close on the acquisition to close on the disposition. So between acquisition and the time you start swinging a hammer and doing demo, you have some permits to do. Right. That's going to take you some time. It could take you 2 months to get your permits and maybe longer. And on the back end, now the contractor goes in, does his stuff. And by the way, Glenn, if he says it's going to take me 3 months to do this project, is it going to take him the 12 weeks to do this project?
Rarely.
Probably not. So you want to give yourself an extra month there for breathing room. I always add 25% of breathing room on the construction timeline. Okay. So the project could take longer. But then once he's gone and he hands you the key back and says, okay, I'm done. Here you go. Have a nice day. And he wants his check. Well, now you have to list it. You have to clean it. You have to stage it. You have to take photos. Then you got to get the realtor all lined up. And if you're not very well organized, that'll take you 2-3 weeks. Yep. And then you get it listed, and now it's got to go on the market. Well, how long is it going to be on the market before you get it under contract? And then from that time, you have to wait until it closes, which is going to be another month, maybe 2. Yep. So on the back end, you need some extra time. So the timelines are going to be off. That's the other thing. So close to close, guys, it's not just the time of the renovation. So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough timeline, because when you're running your numbers, time is money. You're going to have holding costs. And the other thing you really need to pay attention to is that you need to make sure you have enough assets, liquid capital, to hold the property from close to close. Because from the time you close on the acquisition until time you close on the disposition, there's zero money coming in, nothing. Yeah. All you're doing is money out, money out, money out. You're doing your debt servicing on it, your holding costs on it, you're paying your contractors on it. It's money out all day, every day. And unless you have your numbers dialed in and unless you have enough capital, you could easily sink yourself. So you got to understand the concept of flipping, and you got to know what the red flags are and how to really set yourself up for success in your underwriting, because the underwriting is critical.
Oh, those are great tips. Any tips for people? I know that there was a bunch of tips in there. Was there any tips that I or things I should have probed into to pull out of your knowledge on this stuff? Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that I've created a new coaching program. I believe the new coaching program has way more value than any of the programs that have even existed in the past. What we've done is pre-recorded all the lessons so that you can work through it at your own pace, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to meet up on a regular basis to answer the questions, do deal analysis, and actually spend our time together working on things instead of spending our time learning things. I think this will make a seamless transition to buying in the United States and will help you solve a lot of your problems. If this is of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com/coaching. I hope to help you guys invest in the United States, and I hope we provide as much value as possible. Back to the podcast.
Yeah, the other thing that I see people doing is that they get emotional, and nobody really talks about this, right? So a big tip is don't get emotional when you're buying, because an emotional buy is going to cost you money.
Right.
An emotional buy will cost you money, period.
Yep.
So it's really important for people to understand and start to recognize and learn to manage their emotions. So if you get excited about a property and you're underwriting it, step away. It doesn't mean it's a bad deal, but don't get excited. Like if you start feeling that emotion, like do checks with yourself. If you start feeling that emotion showing up, walk away and come back when you can be more logical again and more more level-headed, okay? Because you want to look at the numbers. You don't want the emotion to drive the decisions, because this is what happens when people get emotional or excited about a property. If the numbers aren't quite looking as good as you want them to, people start bending the numbers.
Yeah.
And when you start, you can justify anything. You can justify your way to a loss, guys. And so it's really important that you don't bend the numbers when you're underwriting a property or when you're running it in your deal analyzer. And if you don't have a deal analyzer, you absolutely should.
Yes.
It's the pillar of flipping. even just because people call it underwriting, deal analysis, whatever it is, but you need to have a standard template that you follow that meets all the parameters of what you want. That helps take away that emotion. But at the same time, though, you can bend the numbers so that when the emotion shows up, don't bend the numbers, okay? You just walk away, come back to it when you're a little bit more cool-headed, and then run the numbers again. Or run the numbers, and if you feel that you were emotional, okay, look, I'm going to look at it again in an hour or tomorrow, or get somebody else to run it for you.
I was going to say, get somebody else. Like, get your coach to look at it, your partner to look at it. You know, if you're, planning to sell it, the listing realtor to pull the comps, a proper CMA for yourself. Make sure, like, honestly, I run all my own stuff, but I almost always have someone else check it because I play with other people's money and I don't want to screw it up.
Nobody likes to lose money at all. Like, nobody goes into any of these strategies, whether you're flipping or doing whatever it is you're doing. Nobody goes into it with the intent to lose money, right? But it does happen. Why does it happen? And a lot of times it's because somebody got emotional or just got lazy and didn't do all of the due diligence that they needed to and started guessing at the numbers. Like, oh, we get complacent. I shouldn't say lazy. It's a harsh word. Let's say complacent. So, I did a lot in the same neighborhood. You get complacent. You're like, oh, I know what the numbers are there. Always trust but verify your numbers. So if you're doing a buy and hold, run what the actual rents are. Don't say, well, I know for that I could probably get this. Don't do that. Actually look and see what the market is actually drawing, because those numbers do move. And if they move in the wrong direction, it's going to cost you money. So always trust but verify everything. And if a realtor gives you those numbers, trust and verify the numbers that they're giving you, right? So always double check everything just to make sure that you have a nice solid ironclad project. And especially if you're dealing with other people's money, you really need, and that's what's missing in this industry right now, is people just don't have that high level of responsibility for other people's money. And here's what I'm going to tell you. As a flipper, as a real estate investor, people ask me, what is your most important job? And I tell them is to limit liability and reduce risk. Limit liability and reduce risk. What does that mean? That means I do my work and I limit all of the liabilities that could be exposed to me and my partners, and reduce any risk on a project by doing my due diligence and doing my work. And when you do that, you're not just protecting yourself, but you're protecting your partners, your investors, your tenants, your trades, because you're going to be able to pay them and see things through, right? So that's my job as a real estate investor, is to protect my business, number one, first and foremost, because then I protect everybody within it. But yeah, don't bend the numbers. Have a deal analyzer, have a template that you use that's designed and tailored to you. You can start off with a base with a lot of deal analyzers out there, and then start tweaking it, making it your own. And then just have somebody else look at it or step away, come back to it. Always always check and double check all of your numbers. Yeah,
those are great tips. Danielle, if somebody wanted to learn more about you, wanted to track you down, where do they find you?
It's not hard. I'm everywhere. I think I'm everywhere on social media. Yeah, so you can check me out, my socials. I'm sure, Glenn, you'll have in the notes, the show notes, all of my.
Send it to me. I'll put it in.
Yeah. So I'll get my assistant to send that off to you. But essentially, most of my handles are just my name, Danielle Chaisson. You can Google it, find me. Chaisson is spelled Chiasson, and it's Danielle, not Daniel. So Danielle. I get that a lot. You're laughing, Glenn. Daniel and Danielle, it's the French and female, the male and female version of my name, because I'm French. But anyway, it's kind of funny. But yeah, so you can find me on socials. You can also, I've got my YouTube channel. I'm all over the place, guys. But you can also check out my website, which is strategicsuccessconsulting.com. But other than that, come find me on Instagram and shoot me a DM. Be happy to help if you have any questions.
Awesome. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the show and providing all these tips and do's and don'ts of flipping. I think it was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to share. I love it.
That was a nice video. Bye.